right, hello, and welcome to Life with Liz. I want to tell you how excited I am to be here today. And I'm more excited to introduce my guest for today because his name is Jeff Stewart. Are we Jeffrey? Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Are
Jeff
we
or Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Either way, I've been called many things. We have to be careful, we're on TV.
Yes,
so
yeah, okay.
we'll stick to Jeff or Jeffrey.
Okay.
Don't get me in trouble.
Okay, I'll stick with Jeff. It's
That
just
works.
Jeffrey's just two, you know?
Formal.
Okay,
Got
all
it.
right. So today, Jeff is going to talk to me and y'all about the opioid crisis, okay? And specifically, Jeff, what you do relative to the crisis here in New Hampshire. However,
Okay, there's a trick question in there.
let's roll back
Okay.
and start from the beginning, as they say,
Okay.
with who you are. Okay, a little bit about yourself, because I have it here, guys. Okay, I know I'm not supposed to do this. This man named Jeffrey M. Stewart has this resume, right? It's not called a resume anymore.
CV. Cum vitae.
CV. What's that mean?
Cum vitae.
I have no idea what that means.
It's all right.
It was resume in my day.
That works.
Look at this. Look at this.
It's enough.
Look at this. Okay, I'm done.
It's a lot. There's a lot
It's
there.
a lot. So I'm not even going to touch it, and I'm going to let Jeff.
You're not supposed to do that on the air.
I'm sorry, I did
It's
it on
okay.
the air.
It's all right.
But it was quick, right?
Yeah, it was very
And
quick. It was
relatively
good.
painless.
For the most part.
Okay.
A little nitro and a little aspirin later will be fine.
All right. So, Mr. Jeff Stewart, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, most importantly, I'm born and raised in the state of New Hampshire. So, born and raised in the state. I did leave for a few years to go serve in the U.S. Army. I was a medic in Central America. I have been in emergency medical services for over 30 years. Most of that time has been as a paramedic. I am still a paramedic. So in addition to being a paramedic for a fair amount of time, I teach EMTs and paramedics and do a lot of public speaking, a lot of teaching on those subjects. I also run my own business, Dragon Shield Consulting, as an interventionist. And I got involved in that work slowly. Around 1998, I was asked as a paramedic to teach a course on substance use, street drugs and designer drugs. At the time, that's what we were calling it, street drugs and designer drugs.
Designer drugs.
Right,
Okay.
the ecstasy and those types of things.
Okay.
So 1998, our medical director asked me to teach it. At the time, you got your standard classes of, this is a drug, it's illegal, this is what it looks like, this is what it smells like, don't do it. So the classes I put on at the direction and under the guidance of my medical director, Dr. David Connor at the time, were about the medical impacts. So yes, this is the street drug, and this is what the person using it hopes or anticipates to experience, but this is what's going to happen medically. And at the time, that was new or hadn't been really published a lot or discussed a lot. So that pulled me into this profession or into this side of this business. Over my career, I became a supervisor and a director and ran ambulance services and did education programs and ran into colleagues of mine that had substance use disorder issues. As a director, I've had to terminate employees because of substance use issues. I am a veteran. I do a lot of work with the veteran population. I have a lot of my friends that are in full recovery, but I also had some friends that were struggling with substance use disorder. So it was a slow process, and finally in 2012 I became an actual credentialed interventionist. So I'm a certified level 2 ARISE interventionist, which is a person who is trained and skilled in working with families that are in crisis about substance use disorder, and we facilitate getting the individual into treatment programs.
And that's your other business.
Yeah, that's what Dragon Shield does.
Okay.
But that
Wow.
kind of is my background. So that pulled me into the substance use disorder side of the business from emergency medicine. I'm still a paramedic, still licensed, still practice, and we'll talk about my current position momentarily. But as that paramedic, I was always on the physical side, on the emergency medicine side, and I didn't do a lot with mental health. We dealt with patients in mental health crisis. We dealt with patients who were suffering from substance use disorder, but we didn't do a lot with it. We did with the emergency 15, 20-minute stabilization, 45 minutes depending on transport time, and that was it.
That was it, yep.
So there was a lot of education that I went through, self-directed, and my medical director at the time, and some good friends of mine that were in the world, in the mental health professions kind of directing me and giving me some guidance on where to go and classes to take. And finally, I got credentialed. I just went and took the final course, passed the exams, did all my internship hours, and became a certified interventionist, and have been since 2012.
2012. Because I'm assuming, without, being exposed, and that was my, one of my reasons for having you on here, is to learn more about this, because I believe I'm probably not alone.
Right.
We hear it, but we really don't, we really don't understand it. Okay,
Right.
So. Gosh, I just lost my train of thought on what I was going to ask you. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, I'm sorry, I assume that you've seen an everly increase in the numbers.
Oh, yes.
And that is
Absolutely.
also obviously what has driven you to, intervene in various ways.
Sure. Absolutely seen the increase.
Yes.
And the impact on first responders. And a lot of people don't understand the impact that this has had on our first responder population, because we're constantly dealing with these patients, and often they're repeat patients. So we may, in the case of opioid use disorder, which we're going to talk about today, we may reverse their overdose, literally save their life, and within 24 hours or 36 hours or a couple days, we see them again. And they're in that recidivism and relapse process. And at the time, back in the early 90s, we in EMS didn't have a lot of education on it, and it became a very frustrating issue. And as our opioid crisis increased across America, and specifically here in New Hampshire, and it got serious
Can I ask
numbers.
you, since I don't believe, sorry to interrupt you,
That's okay,
since
please.
I am assuming I wasn't I've only been here 4 years. So, and we, my family lived outside the country, raised my kids 10 years outside the country, then come back in, right?
Yeah.
And land in New Hampshire, right?
Beautiful
And
state, good choice.
It is, well, love it. It's all awesome. But trying to get everybody settled, blah, blah, right? And then I start hearing about this, right? Because I had not, in the countries I'd lived in before, and it was not like it was on the national news, maybe kind of, sort of, but you just don't get that feel, right? You just don't know.
And there's a different, depending on where you were outside the country, there's a very different attitude and perspective on substance use disorder.
Okay.
Or utilization in general.
Okay. Well, we were in Canada, and before that, Singapore. Well, Singapore, nothing. 6 years there.
Very, very
zero. No tolerance, right?
Zero.
So nothing. Canada, I don't know that they have an opioid crisis.
They do.
They do.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's some programs in Canada that were groundbreaking and will slowly transition possibly into the United States.
Is
but there's
that
areas,
right?
Vancouver's done a lot of forward thinking and addressing the issue from a different perspective or taking on different challenges.
Okay,
But
okay,
yes.
very interesting. I did not ever hear, but I was buried in other stuff, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
So,
Life.
and thank God none of my kids,
Right.
interesting. So yeah,
So if you don't see it,
right,
you wouldn't pick up on it
Right.
necessarily.
Right.
But from a substance use disorder perspective, just to get it out there, it impacts everybody, regardless of socioeconomic status. I don't care if you are homeless and have a nickel to your name, you're at risk, or you have millions of dollars in the bank and a stack of money in your living room and you live in a beautiful, gigantic mansion, you're not exempt and you're not protected from this situation and this issue. There is no it impacts everybody across the board. No socioeconomic resistance.
Right,
Doesn't
right.
impact it at all. It hits everybody.
and that's what you all see
Every day.
as a paramedic,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Every
We've-
day?
Every day. Every day we're seeing different impacts of it.
Okay.
So overdose numbers at the peak flow, peak areas within the state, you would see 2 or 3 overdoses in a day on a 24-hour shift. Sometimes you would see less than that. It depended on where you were. So
Okay.
larger population areas had a larger problem, but that didn't take away from the fact that the smaller areas weren't having a problem. They were having a problem. And sometimes that was more difficult because it was longer to get emergency response units there to help. It's harder in terms of treatment options and things like that. So they may have had, if you get to downright close numbers, they may have had a smaller number. However, the impact was just as significant to that community.
Okay. All right. So, and we know is that New Hampshire ranks right up there.
Top 3.
Top 3. Okay. Do you know numbers? Do you have
Not
off the top of your head? That's all right.
And I was just at a meeting before I came here, and they were talking about new numbers being released. So I would direct people to the NewHampshire.gov.
Sure. Oh, easy to find.
Yeah,
easy to find. I don't mean, and I'm not minimizing it, but I was just more curious.
Yep.
But all right. With that said, then let's move ahead.
So we move ahead to Project FIRST.
Yes, Project FIRST.
So where it came from, the federal government initiated a law, FR-CARA, which was to address the opioid use problem utilizing first responders. So it was a federal legislation. They funded it. So I have to give Congress credit. They actually created the law and funded the law. Outstanding. And then agencies or areas or municipalities could apply for grants. And SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Association, they're the ones out of the federal government that are managing this particular grant. In the state of New Hampshire, we applied for it as a state, and they got it. I think it's 3.1 million. I'm not sure.
It is. I looked it up.
Okay, outstanding. So it's 3.1 million.
Yep.
We're the only state that took it as a statewide initiative.
Okay.
So they created from that federal regulation, got the money into the state, and they created New Hampshire FIRST, or New Hampshire Project FIRST, which stands for, obviously New Hampshire, that's the easy part, project it is, First Responders Initiating Recovery Support and Treatment. So you have to be a first responder agency.
Okay.
You apply, you develop your program, you apply, you get grant funding. There are currently 6 areas doing it. So Concord, Laconia, Dunbarton, Epping, Salem, Dunbarton, and there's one other that I'm going to draw a complete blank on. Which
it's not Goffst. No.
Hookset. Sorry,
Hookset. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Hookset
it.
is the other one.
Yep.
So Hookset, Salem, Dunbarton, Epping, Concord Fire, Laconia.
Okay. So they're all
involved in this Project
FIRST.
Yeah. So in the case of Concord Fire Department, they've been pursuing this for over a year. Finally got awarded, and a lot of that delay was really because of the way the grant came from the feds into the state. The state had to create its own infrastructure to handle it and disperse it. So there was a delay there. But Concord Fire applied, Concord Fire got it. They posted a position. I applied and was selected to facilitate it. And what we're doing, there's 4 goals out of this grant. The first goal is to educate first responders and the community about opioid use disorder. Second major component is to reduce opioid overdose death and just overdoses in general through the distribution of Naloxone kits, Narcan, we'll talk about that.
Yep.
The third one is to collaborate with local agencies and communities to better address the individual who's suffering and get them into treatment, get the person to the right place. The emergency department is not necessarily the most advantageous location for a patient who needs substance use disorder treatment. Emergency needs, they weren't breathing, they have a broken bone, they have a underlying severe infection, appropriate. But the emergency department doesn't treat substance use disorder. That's not what they do. They can immediate stabilize,
right,
but the patient really needs to get to a place for treatment.
Right.
So this collaboration is occurring within the grant. And then the fourth thing is sustainability, and developing a sustainability module. So once the grant funding goes away, how do we keep the program moving?
Right. How long is the funding supposed to last?
So 2021, so September 2021. However, SAMHSA requires 1-year renewals. So even though we've been approved for the grant, you still have to submit every year and verify your numbers and hold compliance to the standards of the grant. And then they give you the next year's funding. So we're waiting for our September 30th, 2019, the year we're in right now for the grant expires, and then the funding would go from October 1 forward.
Right.
And we're in that process right now to get that next year's funding.
Okay. And so, all right, so there are 6 municipalities involved in this. Yep. Now you, Mr. Jeff, are the director of this entire program.
For Concord Fire.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I'm the director for Concord Fire.
Okay.
However, the state has targeted Concord Fire as the lead agency.
All right,
So my deputy chief Aaron McIntyre is the one that facilitated this grant process. He's my direct boss. I'm hired in under the grant through Concord Fire, through the deputy, so I report to the deputy chief.
Okay.
But Concord Fire as an agency is the lead agency for this grant for the state. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, so walk us through, because I read in here, and everybody, not everybody, but hey, a lot of folks know about the hub and spoke model.
Yes.
Okay, so because that's I don't know, is that just New Hampshire?
No, actually,
No.
it's a nationwide model.
It is, okay.
Many states have adopted it. I will give our neighbor credit. Vermont actually has had it for quite a while. and has
Okay.
actually mastered it. They're very effective with it.
Very
And I'm
good.
familiar with it because of my work in addiction. I cross state lines frequently with our patients, and I've tapped into the Vermont model
Okay.
occasionally outside of this grant. So the hub and spoke, in a nutshell, they've identified a central location. There's 9 of them throughout the state. Concord is one. Manchester has one. Nashua has one. They identify a lead agency, and that lead agency, or they establish a lead agency that will be facilitating patients' needs, not just substance use disorder.
Right.
That's the one we're focusing on, but it could be homelessness, it could be food issues,
Okay.
hunger issues, that type of. It could be all those services.
Okay.
And New Hampshire has the 211 number now.
Right.
So if somebody needs help, not emergency help, not an ambulance, not a police cruiser, not
Oh,
a fire
okay,
agency.
okay.
So if they need emergency help, 911 as
Right,
always.
right.
But if they're looking for fuel assistance, homelessness issues, VA housing issues,
Okay.
substance use disorder help, those types of services, electric bills, fuel bills, homeless, et cetera, they can call 211.
211. Okay.
And get that type of information. They can connect them to those services.
Okay, I bring
in their
that
area.
up, the hub and spoke, just because your project or your initiative somehow ties into that kind of model.
Correct.
Right?
We
Or
are-
you tied into hub and spoke?
Yes, we are one of the spokes.
You are one of the
So
spokes.
Concord
Okay.
Fire Department for substance use disorder under
Okay.
Project FIRST is a spoke, and we would facilitate through Concord Hospital / Riverbend, that's their combination, into our hub, which is called the doorway in Concord. They call it the doorway in Concord.
Okay. Okay.
And there's 9 doorways in New Hampshire. That's the doorway
Okay.
to assistance, right?
Okay.
That's the idea.
All right.
So Granite Pathways down in Manchester and Nashua are the hubs in those areas.
Okay.
And then different agencies would be spokes into there. And you can get, the idea is you get the person who is in need connected to resources.
Right.
So for this specific grant,
Yes.
this Project FIRST program is really about getting people who have substance use disorder, specifically opioid use disorder,
Okay.
into treatment, into treatment so that they are not utilizing the 911 stuff. They're not overdosing on the side of the road or in their homes, and they're not utilizing the emergency department as their only access.
Okay.
So we want
Okay.
to take that individual who's suffering from substance use disorder and connect them with a treatment center, whether it be outpatient, inpatient, doesn't matter. Just connect them with that treatment center so that they can get treatment and get their substance use disorder squared away.
Okay. So how does that work then, that process?
So the way we've done it at Concord Fire, one of our models is any overdose situation in the city. Of course, Concord Fire provides the ambulance service in Concord. So we go. Our paramedics would take care of the patient, obviously. If the patient needs to go to the emergency room based on their assessment, they would go. If they don't need to go to the emergency room, I would get involved. And we may, depending on the time and what have you, we may go directly to the doorway and facilitate that individual into treatment.
Right.
Or if they're insistent on not going to the hospital and they don't want to go to the doorway, they're connecting them to me, and then I'm going to work with them and almost case manage them. I'm going to enroll them into our program, and then I will work with them to facilitate them into treatment when they're ready. So kind of meeting the patient where they're at.
Okay.
And a lot of times what people don't understand is when somebody overdoses on an opioid, okay, so a heroin, OxyContin, Percocet, whatever the case might be, fentanyl, because that's all over the news.
Yep.
If somebody overdoses, they don't have immediate memory. So when we reverse the overdose and we bring them back with the use of Naloxone,
Yep.
which we'll talk about in a second, when we bring them back, they don't have an immediate memory of that event. The last memory they have is they were sitting down somewhere, and then the next memory is there's a whole bunch of people around me, and my chest hurts and my nose hurts and people are yelling at me, and there's radio's going and they're in a crisis because that's what their memory is.
Right.
So you have to kind of give that patient some time to recalibrate a little bit and process what just occurred, because they really truly have no memory of what happened. Wow, and you can sit there and you can have discussions with them about, I just pulled a needle out of your arm, as an example. And they're like, well, no, you didn't.
Oh.
And they can't understand that, they can't make that connection yet. And now some of that is the impact of the drug and what it does to you when it does that depression issue and puts you into a respiratory arrest and puts you unresponsive. So it's definitely part of that, and a big, huge hunk of that. The other piece is, keep in mind how they've been operating for however long.
Right.
Is they're not honest, they're not upfront, and the activity they're partaking in is not legal, and they don't want to go to jail.
Right.
So there's a little self-protection mechanism going on. So the combination of the two, in fairness to that patient, has no memory of the overdose. And they don't know that they overdosed. They just know that their last memory is they were sitting in a corner, and now they're laid out, and a bunch of people are on them, and asking them 1,001 questions, and they're just waking up, and they're in that fog, and it's a tough time to manage.
Right.
And there's an educational piece, both for the public as well as for the first responder, to understand that. I've been dealing with this a long time. I teach this stuff, but the general EMT or paramedic out of school or even in practice doesn't get a lot of that education in their initial training.
And so,
they know how to treat the overdose. I don't want to negate anything.
Right,
I am a
the
paramedic.
physical.
We know how to take care of them.
Right.
But we don't understand the process behind it. We don't understand the addiction itself necessarily in our standard curriculums.
Okay.
And a lot of that is true with most first responders, police, fire, EMS, all three.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just not part of their everyday training.
Right.
Right. So this grant allows to fill that gap.
To fill that gap.
Sure.
Okay. So your role again then, and do you have folks helping you?
Yes. So we're working on that.
Yeah.
Part of my role was to come in, and we had the grant.
Yep.
And I had to create the administrative behind the scenes.
Right.
So put the consents in play and put the processes in play, the tracking mechanism, because this is a federal grant, so you have to track everything.
Yes.
Where'd that penny go?
Right.
Where did that go? How did you spend that? So you had to put those tracking mechanisms. So we started April 29th. I started with Concord Fire. So
Okay.
It's only 10 weeks
this
in.
is just
We're brand new into this.
We got to do this again.
When I can give you some real numbers.
When you get that money too.
Yeah. So a lot of it was setting all that up. So I've done that.
All right.
I am following, I have 3 clients right now that we're following 3 cases I'm managing. We've distributed over 30 Naloxone kits, 35 Naloxone kits. We've done some education already. So yeah, I've educated about 100 people so far.
Okay, and the people are the...
They can be first responders and they can be public at large. I've done both.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do are there classes that...
Yeah, we'll come and do it. So,
Really?
Yeah. So part of the thing is you reach out to your local EMS agency and see if they're participating in the Project FIRST.
Okay.
If you're anywhere in the Concord area, Concord proper, or what we call our capital area, which is the immediate surrounding towns of Concord, they can call Concord Fire Department, call me specifically. We'll put our website and email address on the TV screen.
Yeah, what's the website, real quickly?
www.concordnh.gov.
Okay. Oh, and
And go to the fire department,
Right.
and my information's right there.
Yeah, but your organization is there.
Correct.
I mean, you can just Google.
Yeah, you can Google it. It's right
Okay.
there, and I believe they're going to put it on the TV screen. So
Yes.
it'll be
Okay.
on the screen. I
All
can't
right.
point to anything
We got to
because
make
we
sure.
haven't set that up yet.
Okay, so we have not much time.
Okay.
Do you want to
Real
spend
quick,
a couple
sure.
minutes?
So this is the
Since
Naloxone
I've
kit.
never seen this. Yes.
So this is what we distribute out. We educate the individual how to use it, as well as the families, which this is really advantageous to the family because the individual might have it on them, but the family needs to know how to use it. So if you open it up, as you did,
Yep.
there's some paperwork in there. We'll get to the Naloxone in a
that's
second.
it, yep.
There's a brief pamphlet on our program, Project FIRST. That's pretty straightforward. The educational piece on, again, my contact information for getting replacement kits if you use it, and instructions on how to use it. So that's all in there.
Okay.
Pair of gloves.
Yep, which is a good thing, right?
There's a face shield in there, a little keychain, yeah. So if you had to give rescue breaths, you could use a face shield. And if you're calling 911, which we want people to do, they'll teach you how. Walk you right through it. Piece of cake. So if we open up the Naloxone, this is the standard Naloxone. If you open up, there's actually 2 doses in here.
Oh, there is 2
Yes,
doses.
2 doses in here. Pretty straightforward. Very simple. This is what it looks like. called naloxone.
Okay.
And when I teach people, I said, do you remember the Afrin bottle, Afrin nasal spray?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's how it works.
So
you literally put the nasal part right up the nose, a little pointy part up the nose, and push from the bottom.
that's it.
That's it. Done. 2 seconds.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was along the lines of an EpiPen.
Nope.
You know?
Much easier. Much easier.
EpiPens.
No needles in this.
Awesome.
This is a nasal spray, basically. It is a nasal spray. And it goes right up the nair. And each dose is 4 milligrams, which is what we're finding is at least being needed, minimum starting.
Okay.
Very simple. You wait 2 to 3 minutes. Patient should come around. If they don't, you can repeat it. That's why you have 2 doses in the kit.
Very good. It's so easy. I didn't actually
Extremely simple.
realize that. Yeah. So when you say you've distributed how many?
About 35 kits, I think, in less than 2
do you
weeks.
do that as you? Where?
So they can get a kit a couple of ways. One, they can contact me if they're in the Concord greater capital area. We also went ahead intentionally and we have one kit on our fire apparatus so that if our fire apparatus is out at a scene or our ambulance and the family member's there, we can give them a kit to the family member, if we're in the middle of an overdose.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of the patient, obviously, but at the same time, we're probably going to, one of our firefighters will grab the kit and educate the family member or the significant other on how to use it and stuff, because it's a horrible, horrible feeling if your loved one is sitting there not breathing or not breathing effectively, literally dying in front of you, and you can't do anything about it. It's a gut-wrenching, horrible place to be. So the advantage with naloxone, I want to be clear, naloxone treats the overdose. It does not treat substance use disorder, because a lot of the feedback we get, or a lot of the questions I field, how come we're giving free Narcan or naloxone kits and we're not giving free diabetes medication or chemotherapy? Very easy. Chemotherapy and diabetes medication treat the disease of diabetes or cancer. Naloxone does not treat the disease of substance use disorder or opioid use disorder specifically. It doesn't treat that. All it does is reverse the overdose, which is what the opiate does. It reverses that life-threatening moment in time. That's all it addresses.
Okay.
It is not designed to treat opioid use disorder. It's designed to treat an overdose situation.
Right.
And that's what it does.
Okay. That's pretty
very
crystal
distinct.
clear. Yeah, but
very
I
distinct.
mean, but I can see how.
But a very valid argument.
Could happen. Yep.
Valid argument.
Right.
Good discussion to have with people, and a misnomer out there a lot of times.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, this has been very interesting, very informative. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate coming out.
You bet. So Project FIRST. And again, all the information will be up.
Yep, we'll put it on the screen.
Yep. And so, once y'all keep rolling through this, I'd love to have you back.
Sure, we'll come back anytime.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, this is Liz, Life with Liz. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I will be back again soon. And this is great information. And I think that, Jeff, you couldn't have explained it better. All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks again.